Okay, we are on lesson number 332 from the workbook of A Course in Miracles. And I was reading this, and I have to tell you, I went to college. I went to a Jesuit university, and there were a number of Jesuit priests that we had for different subjects. And there were subjects, of course, there were things that we had to take. There was a core curriculum that in liberal arts school that included something like Shakespeare, at least a semester of Shakespeare. So I took the semester of Shakespeare in first semester of my second year, and I wish I could remember the priest's name, because Shakespeare made him come alive, and him coming alive allowed me to hear Shakespeare in a way that enlivened me, because it was his passion. And when I read these lessons, especially today's, it really takes me back to this priest, and I really wish I could remember his name. And I enjoyed Shakespeare so much, and I did well in it. Anything I applied myself to, I do well in. I did well in it, and most people hated it. So I took a second semester of Shakespeare with the same priest, because to me it was like going in and watching a one-man show. He would read this stuff, and it was just this beautiful language, and I loved listening to him read it, and the passion that he brought to Shakespeare gave me a passion for Shakespeare, and eventually I read more of him outside of the course, outside of the class as well. And today's lesson, I would love, because when I read something like this, and the language is so brilliantly orchestrated in the iambic pentameter with the rhyme and rhythm and flow, that I wish that I had. And sometimes I do hear his voice and sort of see him in my mind's eye, and the passion that he brought to this class. These are boring classrooms in a Jesuit university, and the passion that he brought to the subject of Shakespeare. And what amazed me all the time was not everybody really appreciated excuse me, the passion and the life that he brought to the material. And that part I was always stunned about. And I guess Shakespeare is just dull to many, but the language is really vivid, and particular and precise, as Jesus always is with his language. Fear binds the world, forgiveness sets it free. And here, I wish I could read it in the cadence to show you how incredible it is as a song, in the rhyme and the cadence and that Jesus uses in the Shakespearean language, because to me it is song. The universe ultimately is vibratory frequencies of energy. It's a song. I received the instruction, and it was interesting today, because I was involved in a conversation with another Course in Miracles student who lives out here over lunch. And we were talking about it, and he was asking me, I think he may be coming to Quincy. He's a great guy, plays music too. While he was talking and I was listening, there's a particular way of listening. And this is one of the things that I've learned from the Course. There's a particular way of listening that goes beyond evaluation of the words, although could include it later on, because this is sometimes what happens to me with it. So I'll listen, and I'll listen to what's really going on behind there. and what the person is trying to say to me. And it's like an open-minded thing. And when I listen, when I commit myself, because it's always the decision. Remember, it is always the decision that you make, even to breathe, that allows anything to occur. And in the pause of making any decision, that's why in the way of mastery, in the way of mastery, JM is big on teaching a breathing technique. Okay, none of this world is real, so it can't be. It can't be in the technique. It can't be in the actual breath. It can't be in any form or substance. It is in the decision to pause, become conscious, wherein which spirit joins you, because you allow spirit to catch up with you by taking the second place and allowing spirit to fill in and then carry you along with it in the flow of the truth of who you are as part of the song of creation. The ego makes illusions. Truth undoes its evil dreams by shining them away. Truth never makes attack. It merely is, and by its presence is the mind recalled from fantasies, awaking to the real. Forgiveness bids this presence enter in and take its rightful place within the mind. Without forgiveness is the mind in chains, believing in its own futility. Yet with forgiveness does the light shine through the dream of darkness, offering it hope and giving it the means to realize the freedom that is its inheritance. Now, if you go back and read some of, pick a play, the Henry plays, when you read Prince Hal talking to Falstaff, when you go, you will hear this language, but not only are you going to hear the language, you're going to hear the principles as well in what Shakespeare is attempting to express to the people of his times through the plays that he brought to the public's attention and the subjects that were presented. Much as Jesus used parables, Shakespeare used the language in such a way as to engage the mind and heart and to bring lessons that could be learned through the willingness to see what he was weaving. Much the same people who did it as well. The Greeks in their comedies and tragedies. If you go and read or can see a Greek and begin to understand what it is that's the interplay of the good and the bad, and how the harpies or the woe sayers, the shadowy figures would come on and say woe, and the good voices who plead, you'll see the same action. And the Greeks, in their attempt to explain what was occurring, used a word called hubris, Hubris. It's one of those words that doesn't have an actual translation, but what it has is it comes with an understanding when you see within the play or the comedy where hubris causes the hero to fall. The tragic flaw, let's call it, it's talked about as. Hubris is the tragic flaw within the mind of the king that causes him to both arise to the apex of his domain, yet at the same time lose track of how he rose and think that he was larger than the process in the universe itself. And there was always an action in him that caused him to fall from grace. And he wasn't really falling from grace, of course. He was just falling out of the rhythm and flow of his own natural process of being. So that's hubris. So the same ideas, these are universal principles, yet these are universal ideas presented in principles that have been tried out within the mind and heart of another human, allowing him to rise to the apex of his own existence, wherein which death is no longer an obstacle, so the world is no longer necessary. All the world's a stage, and all the world has been a stage for the drama of resurrection and the acceptance into our heart and mind of the truth of who we are as we begin to elevate who we are through the utilization of these principles. Forgiveness offers us everything we want. Forgiveness, fear binds the mind. If fear binds the mind, there's only one way to free ourselves from fear. It's not through validation of the fear as existing. It's through setting ourselves free from the idea of fear as having any effect on us by the Holy Spirit showing us that it does not exist, and what is occurring is not what we thought was occurring within the limited range of the thinking of the human being within the world he thinks he occupies and must succeed in one way or the other, and feels judged in relationship to his own thinking about himself and his mind as to whether he's successful, which is crazy. We would not bind the world again today. That's what we've been doing. Binding the world to the limitations within our own mind, by the possibilities of what we think are going to help free us from what we think are keeping us from being happy, free, whole, perfect, or whatever the ideal in our mind that we are pursuing. Because I feel everyone is pursuing an ideal of some sort. And yet, instead of pursuing the ideal as Joseph Campbell used to teach, follow the bliss, people put a form association to the ideal and then pursue the form association thinking they're pursuing the ideal. This is the hubris of the mind. Lose track of the light that comes and joy that is in the pursuit of the ideal. Now we're talking about Knights of the Round Table, King Arthur, Merlin living backwards so that he understands everything that's going on, and attempting to get Arthur to understand as well, to prepare him for what's going to occur in his life, and that will threaten the kingdom because everything knows. And that's what we're talking about. It's the same idea. It's that moment being presented over and over again in a way in which Merlin is much like the tech crew for Arthur. Merlin presents Arthur with the lessons that he knows Arthur needs to learn, so that when Arthur's moment comes, where hubris can either be his downfall and the downfall of the kingdom, or he can step forward and be the savior and go beyond where everything seems to exist right there. Okay? That's what this mind training is about for each and every one of us individually, so that we can come to that point of hubris in our own mind, in our own heart, in our own kingdom. Jesus says we all have a kingdom we must rule, and that kingdom is a kingdom of mind and heart. It's not a kingdom in the world, and yet how we're ruling the kingdom, how we're utilizing our heart and mind to rule our kingdom, is reflected in how the world seems to be operating with us and the reflection that it's getting from what we're projecting outside of ourselves. We would not bind the world again today. Fear holds it prisoner. And yet your love has given us the means to set it free. Yes, this is one of the biggest things I would like people in the Course in Miracles to understand. The ego fosters the belief. And therefore, you go looking for proof that the belief is true in order to have something outside of yourself help shape your destiny and be responsible for the decisions that you make. Okay? The ego the ego fosters the belief. I forgot what I was going to going to say, it got really funny because it's so ridiculous. We would not bind the world again today. Fear holds it prisoner. And yet your love has given us the means to set it free. Father, we would release it. Okay, we can set it free within our own heart and mind every time we utilize forgiveness as an action of mind to free us from the fear, because if it's truly a projection of our mind and we get the result in the reflection and what's going on, then as we give and grant freedom, it is received by us. God created us to give, to show forth his goodness. I learned that when I was 6 years old. It was true. And then everything else they tried to teach me after that was a contradiction to what they asked me to believe about God. And every child knows it. There's another thing I should do about children and guilt and stuff. Okay. God created us to show forth his goodness. Okay. We can't show forth his goodness in a condition of thinking we are badness. God does not create bad things. Okay. When I was 6 years old, you learn God. Okay. So now we're being brought back to the point where instead of contradicting that, we're going to use the light in that statement to look at everything that seems to be contradictory and allow our mind to open. Forgiveness undoes the evil dreams by shining them away, by bringing light into our own thinking so we're no longer afraid of our thoughts. It opens our mind. And it has to be done by choice, because everything is by choice and by decision. And we would not remain as prisoners while you hold out our freedom unto us. So incrementally, through the action of forgiveness, we loose the world from what we thought it was, because we question what we were thinking about the world and why we thought that was the way it was. You know, who's the master teachers? It's a question. I mean, it's a very good question when you stop and think about it. And what the ego does is it makes the questioner seem crazy because he's questioned something that a belief that you've given power to and now made into an image formulation in order to validate the belief and prove to yourself that it's true, rather than questioning it. So he would say something like, who told you you had to get old and sick and die? Well, who did? It's not a condemnation. It's a question. You can use it to open your mind if your mind isn't shut to the certainty that that's all life has to offer. Are you fearful to go beyond where Jesus has gone beyond death and we're living in the resurrection? I assure you that is true, but it requires a decision on your part to prove that to yourself, that that is the truth. And that's what Jesus is asking us to do with these lessons. Take them out for a test drive. By its presence, the mind is recalled from the fantasies, awakening to the real. We're awakening to the reality. We're awakening in these moments when we utilize these principles within the action of our own heart and mind for the purpose that we have been given them for. Instead of associating forgiveness with fear and guilt, which is what the ego fosters and wants us to believe. That's where I was going before. The ego fosters thinking that tells you the reason why you need forgiveness is because you must have done something wrong, you're evil, and it plays in your mind, and it festers on the weakness. The weakness festers, and all of a sudden, the world is presenting you with evidence of the truth of that. Okay? Forgiveness sets you free from that. Truth undoes those evil dreams by you exposing the thinking so you can see it's not true. The ego is the ideal. Pursue the ideal, not the form, because the form is what the illusion is made out of. Form associations that we built into a house of cards, thinking that when we finally have it together, it will, our dreams will come true. And the more and more our dreams come true, the further and further away we're going from following our ideal. We have to follow the ideal. And every one of us has one within us. We all have an ideal. It's like that's where what enlivens us. Where you can feel the activity of it. When I talk about it in your third eye. It's where you are a facet and to shine the light of that brilliant diamond. And the ego wants you to make it into a form and pursue the form. And we lose track of the ideal. And we fall down and we get up again, and fall down and we get up again, until we find out exactly what's going on, and then we can consciously begin to make decisions in a spot and feeling tone exactly where we before we made an error, so that we can elevate the kingdom in the resurrection rather than having to go. I wish I could show you how this works. Okay. It's like you build back to the moment. You build back. It's like space and time is just layers and layers of stories of the same event happening and over again, where at the apex of the moment when it's available, the same old decision is made because of the identity with the ego and the ways of the world. Throw yourself off the cliff, and I will give the world to you. Jesus finally made that decision and showed us what is beyond by going and being what is beyond and offering us the glimpses of that and our ability to integrate that and rise up with him, because this isn't real and solid. It's mind stuff. There's overlays. And in any given moment, you can make a decision that employs a miraculous force that works in all dimensions of time all the time, and you could free, like dominoes falling, long strains of evil dreams in a single shining of the truth. We would not bind the world against fear holds a prisoner, and yet your love has given us the means to set it free. Yes. And that's what we want. We want to be free, so we must set the world free. Because setting the world free is setting us free, because God only gives. We receive in order to give. When we give, we can receive more. So, and this is what I was talking about before. So if we would like to receive more, we must learn to give. Anything we have, we can start to utilize in order to give. There's not a single person who does not have something within their mind and heart now, even in the substance around them, whatever it may be, that they can't begin to give of. And as they learn of the joy of giving, not to get anything, but simply because God only gives, that's the divine part of the action of our mind, and we receive, the universe will begin to bring it back to us, because that's the law of cause and effect within the universe, how it works, and leads us back to the infinite nature of our own being and creation and reality. The ego would bind us, fostering a condition wherein which limitation seems to be our reality by the images it makes of what it thinks it needs to have in order to prove to itself that this is real, and joy can be had here in following its conclusion.